Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I stood in the middle of my parents' sprawling estate, feeling like a fraud. Every room, every corner of this place screamed success. Success that wasn't mine. The glass chandeliers, the marble floors, the endless guest list for some charity auction or other. It was all so damn loud. Aunt Judy's voice cut through the noise like a blade. So, Sarah, still doing that. Graphic design thing? I forced a smile, nodding. Yeah, still at it. Oh, that's nice. I mean, it's a real job, right? She said, her tone sweet but sharp as a tack. Before I could respond, my dad, George, dropped his glass of wine on the table with a thud. How long are you going to waste your time on that, Sarah? He asked, eyes cold. You've got real potential. You could be doing something much more practical. Like Matt, he's a lawyer, not chasing some silly hobby. Matt, sitting across the table, raised an eyebrow. Dad's right, you know. You've got to be realistic about your future. You've always been, well, the odd one out. My pulse spiked. Of course, Matt, always the golden boy, had to weigh in. He had a wife, kids, a growing law practice. The whole responsibility act. I'm doing just fine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But George wasn't done. We've been too generous, Sarah. You need to grow up. You can't live off us forever. You need to start pulling your own weight, or we're done. No more handouts. The room went silent. I stared at my father, a mix of anger and disbelief swirling inside me. But I didn't say a word. What was the point? I just nodded and kept my mouth shut. Well, I'll figure it out, I finally said, my voice calm, even though everything inside me was anything but. Matt shifted uncomfortably, but it was George's words that hung in the air, suffocating. No more financial help? Fine. Let them see what happens when they don't get to use me as their safety net anymore. I walked out of the house without saying another word, the soft murmur of my family's conversations fading behind me. George's voice was still ringing in my head. Grow up, no more handouts. It was all I could hear as I crossed the driveway to my car, my feet dragging with each step. The world outside was cool, quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos inside the house. My Toyota Corolla was parked in the farthest spot, as usual. The damn thing was as old as my college years, but it was mine, and it worked. No flashy BMWs or Range Rovers for me. I threw my bag on the passenger seat, slammed the door, and started the engine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being the family's black sheep. That's how they'd always treated me. Different. The way they dismissed my career, as if what I was doing didn't count. My father, especially, had always been quick to remind me that I wasn't doing real work. Hell, my whole career in design had been brushed aside. I was supposed to be following a practical path. But that's the thing. While they'd been judging me, they had no idea what I was really doing. As I drove through the quiet streets, I let the weight of my father's ultimatum settle in. No more handouts. The words stuck with me. I wasn't about to beg them for help. Not anymore. It was time they learned the truth. My graphic design business, it was small potatoes. I wasn't living off it, not even close. I'd built something much bigger, something they'd never even thought to ask about. Real estate, tech investments, e-commerce. They didn't know that, while they'd been living their high-flying lives, I'd been quietly building an empire in the background. I thought about the places I'd bought, the contracts I'd signed, the tech startup I'd helped fund. I'd been making smart moves with my money, making sure it worked for me. Property portfolios, a handful of online businesses. These things weren't just helping me stay afloat, they were thriving, growing faster than my family ever could have guessed. It wasn't just the investments either. I'd been funding them all along. My father's tech company, Matt's law firm, hell, even Alice's charity events. They didn't know it, but I'd been the one keeping their cash flow going for years. When George's tech company struggled, I stepped in. When Matt couldn't pay his bills, I was there, propping up his practice without a word of thanks. But now I had the power. They were about to learn what I had been doing for them, and how they'd taken it for granted. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, a modest 3-story complex. The elevator smelled like stale coffee and old carpet, but it was home. I unlocked the door to my apartment, tossed my bag on the couch, and went straight to my computer. I logged into my accounts, my fingers moving quickly over the keys. The numbers on the screen didn't lie. The real estate holdings, several properties across the city, were worth more than the entire estate my parents lived in. The tech investments, they'd quadrupled in the last 2 years. I had quietly become a player in an industry they'd never even understood. My portfolio wasn't just solid, it was growing faster than anyone would have expected. I leaned back in the chair and let out a long breath. My family thought they were cutting me off, but they had no idea what I was about to do. They thought I was still the black sheep, the one who couldn't make it on her own. But now I held all the cards, and I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I could fix their problems, sure, but I wasn't going to do it for them. They would learn. They would finally learn who was really holding the strings. And when they came crawling back to me, they would know exactly who'd been making sure their world didn't crumble. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them how it felt to be in the position I'd always been in, underestimated, dismissed, and used, and that would change. Soon enough, they'd see. My phone buzzed on the table next to me as I scrolled through my investment accounts. It was a text from Matt. Hey, don't take it personally. Dad's just trying to motivate you. You know how he is. You're doing great. I rolled my eyes, tossing my phone aside. Motivate me? That was the same line they'd been using for years. I couldn't count how many times Matt had said it, usually right after Dad made some snide remark about how I wasn't living up to my potential. Motivation was a nice word for, get your shit together or we're done helping you. I picked up the phone again and typed back, forcing a smile as I did. Thanks, Matt. I know. I just need to figure things out. I'll be fine. That was enough to keep him off my back. He didn't need to know anything more. I wasn't about to let him or anyone else know the truth about how I was doing just fine, probably better than any of them. With a deep breath, I refocused on the task at hand. I opened up my business accounts, the ones that no one knew about. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second, but I knew what I needed to see. The figures on the screen were a stark contrast to the life they assumed I was living. My graphic design work? A drop in the ocean compared to the rest of it. I glanced at my real estate portfolio first. There were 4 properties now, all in prime locations. The numbers were solid: rental income, capital appreciation. It wasn't just some side hustle, it was a business. I'd been flipping properties here and there for years. They had no idea how much money I was pulling in from this. Next, I checked my tech startup. It had been a risk when I first got involved, but the payoff had been more than worth it. Software development, data management, and now a small but steadily growing client base. It wasn't huge, but it was thriving, and the best part? My dad would never look at me and see someone building a tech company. To him, I was still the creative kid who couldn't keep a steady job. I shifted to my e-commerce websites, 4 of them now, each specializing in different niches: tech gadgets, fashion, home goods. I'd started small, but those sites were pulling in a decent amount of passive income now. They were growing, and every time I refreshed the analytics page, I saw the numbers climb higher. It wasn't just that I was making money, I had a strategy. I'd built all this from scratch, not relying on anyone. Certainly not my family. And while they were out living their shiny, successful lives, I'd quietly been keeping the wheels in motion. I had helped them without them ever knowing. George's company was in trouble, sure, but I'd been the one propping it up when they couldn't get their shit together. Matt's law firm? I'd been there with funding every time his practice struggled, even if he'd never thanked me for it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the balance sheets. This was the moment. The real power I had wasn't in just making money. It was in what I controlled without anyone even realizing it. They didn't know how much I had quietly subsidized their lives. They thought they were the ones with their shit together while I was the black sheep scrambling to keep up. But now they'd see the truth. They'd see that I had been holding up their world without them ever knowing. I didn't want to break them, but they had to understand. The truth had to come out, just enough to make them see what they'd taken for granted. So I made a plan. I wasn't going to strip them dry, not completely. But I could pull the rug out from under them just long enough to let them experience what it felt like to truly struggle. To make them realize that without me, without my money, their worlds would come crashing down. It wouldn't be forever, but it would be enough to show them that I was the one holding the strings. Maybe they'd respect me after that. Maybe they'd finally see me for what I was. Not the screw-up, not the one who wasn't living up to their standards. Maybe they'd understand that I was stronger than they'd ever given me credit for. I took a deep breath and set my plan into motion. It was time to change the game. The phone rang just after 8 a.m. It was George. I took a moment before answering, letting it ring twice more than I should have. Hey, Dad, I said, pretending I didn't already know what was coming. Sarah, this is a goddamn nightmare. His voice was strained, high-pitched, not at all the confident, in-control man I'd grown up with. The company's accounts are frozen. I can't access any of our funds. What the hell is going on? I acted confused, just like I was supposed to. Frozen? What do you mean? I mean, I can't get to any of our money. All of our transactions are blocked. Our payroll's overdue. This is this is catastrophic. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from smiling. That sounds like a technical issue. Have you called the bank? I've called. I've done everything. Nothing is working. They keep saying it's something with the accounts, something flagged as suspicious, but I don't know what the hell happened. I'm telling you, Sarah, this is bad. Well, I'm not really the expert with that kind of thing, I said, forcing an air of concern. I'm sure it'll get sorted out. Have you tried a financial advisor or someone who can help with those kinds of problems? I don't have time for that. What the hell am I supposed to do? The board's going to eat me alive. We're going to lose everything. I let the silence stretch for a second, then said, I don't know what to tell you, Dad, but it doesn't sound like something I can fix. Maybe you should look into legal action or some kind of remedy. There was a pause, and I could almost hear him pacing. I need you to help me, Sarah. You've always known how to fix things. You have connections. Don't you have someone who can... I cut him off before he could finish. I don't know, Dad. You told me I needed to figure things out myself. Maybe this is the universe motivating you, like you said. The line went quiet. I could almost hear his jaw grinding. He knew exactly what I was doing. But he didn't have a choice now. I'll see what I can do, I said softly before hanging up. As soon as I set my phone down, another one buzzed. It was a message from Matt. Hey sis, I'm not sure what's going on, but there are some issues with my law firm's accounts. We can't process any transactions. Clients are pissed. This is affecting everything. Can you help? I stared at the message for a beat. My brother was usually so calm, so put together, but this sounded desperate. I could practically hear him pacing too. I texted back, playing the concerned sibling. That's really strange. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm sure it's a technical thing. Maybe try reaching out to your bank's support. I have. No luck. Can you at least look into it for me? I paused before responding. I wish I could, Matt, but I'm not really in the position to help with this kind of stuff. I guess it's just a mess for everyone right now. Hopefully, it'll get sorted out. I could feel the weight of his frustration through the screen. But I kept it neutral, kept it calm. I guess, he wrote back, before sending an emoji of a facepalm. A few minutes later, another message, this time from my mom. Sarah, I can't buy groceries. My card isn't working. I don't understand what's happening, but we need help. I read the message again, allowing the panic in her words to wash over me. I almost felt bad, but then I remembered all the times she'd brushed off my career, all the ways she'd put me down. She didn't even know the half of it. I texted her back quickly. What do you mean your card isn't working? Are you sure it's just a technical problem? I don't know, honey. I went to buy some things for dinner and it just declined. I'm at the store now. I let a few minutes go by, letting the tension simmer. Then I replied, I'm sure it's just a temporary issue. Maybe check with the bank? I really wish I could do more, but it sounds like everyone's dealing with this today. You'll get it sorted. Then, the real kicker, George called back. Sarah, this is what I'm talking about. I need your help. If I don't get access to those accounts, I'm going to lose everything. Your mother can't buy groceries, Matt can't pay his clients, and now this whole mess is getting out of control. You have to do something. I didn't flinch. I just let him talk, letting the chaos of his words sink in. It was almost hard to pretend that I wasn't enjoying this. Just a little bit. I don't know, Dad. I'm just as confused as you are, I said. But it sounds like the issues are affecting everyone. It might just be some kind of glitch or hold they've put on your accounts for some reason. I guess you'll have to wait it out. Wait it out? Wait it out? We don't have time to wait? You're the only one who can fix this. I kept my voice even, trying to sound helpless. You told me I needed to grow up, so maybe this is the wake-up call you need. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him taking deep breaths, trying to calm down, but I wasn't about to give him an inch. I'll keep trying to reach someone at the bank, I added before hanging up. I set my phone down and leaned back in my chair, taking it all in. They were spiraling. It was exactly what I wanted. Let them sweat it out. Let them realize that without me, their shiny lives would crumble. But soon, very soon, they would come crawling back. And that's when I would have the upper hand. By the time the afternoon rolled around, my phone had blown up with frantic messages. George had called 4 times, Matt sent another 2 texts, and my mom, she was practically begging. I didn't answer any of them. I knew exactly what was happening. They'd all gathered at George's house for an emergency meeting, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. I wasn't rushing to join them. No, I had the luxury of being late. They had no idea that I was the one holding the power now. When I finally walked into the room, I could feel the tension before I even stepped through the door. George was pacing, his hands running through his hair, his face more worn than I'd ever seen it. Matt sat on the edge of a chair, staring down at his phone, his jaw tight. Alice was sitting at the table looking lost, her hands wringing in her lap. Ah, Sarah, you made it, George said, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked. We've been waiting for you. I gave him a quick nod, taking my seat. What's going on? Matt glared at me, his patience clearly running out. What's going on? What's going on is everything's falling apart. You're the one with the connections, right? You know people in finance, you know how these things work. Why aren't you helping us? I met his gaze, trying to keep my face neutral. I'm not sure what you expect me to do. It sounds like a technical issue. Maybe you should just be patient. Everything's getting messed up for everyone right now. George slammed his palm on the table. It's not a technical issue, Sarah. The company's accounts are frozen. Matt's firm can't process payments. Your mother can't buy groceries. I'm telling you, this is catastrophic. I sighed, leaning back in my chair, still calm. I know it's bad, but flipping out like this isn't going to help. Let me look into it. I'll see if I can figure something out. Look into it? Matt snapped, his voice rising. You're not exactly in a position to look into anything. You've always been the one to avoid dealing with the real shit. You're the one who's been sitting pretty, doing your design thing while we've been working our asses off. The words hit harder than I expected, but I kept it together. I don't see how that's relevant right now, Matt. We're all in this mess together. If anyone can fix this, I'm sure it's going to take a lot more than just me showing up with a magic solution. We're going to have to work through it. But you do have the answers, don't you? Matt shot back, his tone bitter. You've always had the answers when it came to our problems, right? I didn't let the anger show, even though his words stung. I'm not sure what you want me to say. I'm doing the best I can. Alice, who had been silent up until now, looked between Matt and me, her eyes wide. You're not getting involved in this? Sarah, we need your help. I saw the panic in her eyes, but I wasn't about to bend. I'm doing what I can, but I'm not going to just rush in and fix everything for you. You're all adults. You need to start handling your own problems, not waiting for me to swoop in. George clenched his fists, his face turning red. You have to help, Sarah. You're the only one who understands this stuff. You've been helping us for years, and now you want to act like you can't? What the hell is going on with you? I could feel the weight of their expectation, their desperation pressing on me. But I stayed calm, my voice cool. I'll look into it. But it might take a little while to sort everything out. I stood up to leave, not waiting for any more responses. The room was thick with frustration, and they all watched me as I walked toward the door. You'll get it figured out, right? Matt called after me. Of course, I said without looking back. I'll keep you posted. As soon as I was out the door, I let out a slow breath. The weight of their stares, the way they relied on me, expected me to help, had been suffocating. But I wasn't about to be their savior anymore. They'd need to learn how to solve their own problems. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened my accounts again. The numbers hadn't changed. Everything was still under my control. Every property, every investment, every dollar. They hadn't realized it yet, but I had them exactly where I wanted them. I logged into the account where I'd shifted the funds around, just enough to make them panic, just enough to let them feel the absence of my support. I checked the balances, watching the numbers sit exactly where I'd left them. It was all still mine. I smirked to myself. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought I was the one struggling, the one without a plan. But soon enough, they'd realize who was really in charge. The game was just getting started. I'd been waiting for this moment, and now it was finally here. The next day, I scheduled a family meeting at my apartment. They were all nervous, unsure of what was coming, and I could see it in the way they texted and called. But they were also desperate enough to show up. When they arrived, I kept the door open, but I didn't invite them in with the usual pleasantries. No hugs, no small talk. I wasn't playing the part of the good daughter today. George stepped through first, looking harried. Matt followed, his eyes darting around like he was still expecting some miracle. Alice looked pale, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Thanks for coming, I said, standing in the middle of the living room. Take a seat. They all settled uneasily, George on the couch, Matt leaning against the wall. Alice stood, not sure where to put herself. I didn't give them much time to settle in. I know you've all been dealing with the mess I caused, I started, letting the words hang in the air a little longer than necessary. But it's time you knew the truth. I pulled up my laptop and projected the screen onto the wall. Their eyes flicked to the images as the real estate portfolio loaded first. I clicked through each property one by one, showing the addresses, the market values, the income I'd been making off of them. Matt crossed his arms. What is this? You've been buying up property? Why the hell didn't you tell us? I didn't answer immediately. I clicked to the next screen, bringing up the documents from my tech startup, contracts, equity stakes, and projected growth charts, a company they never even knew existed. You've been doing this on the side? George's voice was barely a whisper. I could tell the pieces were starting to fall into place for him. I've been doing this for the last 3 years, I said. But it's not just real estate. It's more than that. I've been supporting you all. I opened a folder of bank statements, showing exact amounts that I'd wired over to George's company during tough months. Then I flipped to Matt's law firm's transactions, money I'd transferred to cover overhead when the firm was struggling to make payroll. Every dollar had my name on it. I showed them property deeds, business agreements, and contracts, each one tied directly to me. Wait, you're saying all this time? Matt started, his words trailing off. He ran his hand through his hair, clearly processing the documents that had been laid bare in front of him. You've been bailing us out? Every single time you needed it, I said calmly, without you ever knowing. George's face went from red to ashen. His eyes darted over the papers, his expression flipping between disbelief and anger. How long have you been doing this? He demanded, his voice rough. 3 years, I repeated. 3 years of keeping your tech company from crashing. 3 years of propping up Matt's firm. You've never known how close you've come to losing everything. Alice finally spoke, her voice trembling. But why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you just ask for help? I took a breath, letting the silence settle. Because you don't see me as someone who can help. You see me as the one who's always falling short, the one who hasn't measured up to your standards. I was never the right kind of success in your eyes. George stood up suddenly, pacing the small space, muttering under his breath. This is insane. This can't be happening. How could you let this go on without saying a word? Because I knew what you'd do if I told you. You'd think I was trying to take credit for what you've built, and you'd never let me in. You would have shut me out completely, I said, leaning forward. I wasn't going to let that happen. Matt finally uncrossed his arms, running his hands over his face in frustration. So you've been quietly pulling the strings behind all of us, and now you want us to just, what, accept this? I let the tension sit between us before answering. I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm asking you to understand that you've been dependent on me this whole time. You've been using my money, my investments, without even realizing it. And now you have 2 options. They all turn to look at me, waiting. Option 1, you keep living the way you have, thinking that you're the ones in control. You keep using me to fill the gaps, relying on me to clean up the messes you make. But nothing changes. You'll keep treating me like the failure you've always thought I was, while I carry your weight on my shoulders. I let the words hang there, heavy and loaded. Option 2, you work with me. You stop pretending that everything you've built is self-made. We work together to rebuild your businesses for real, not on borrowed time. You respect the fact that I've been the one keeping things together, and that means you listen to me. You stop treating me like I'm the black sheep, and we make things right. George's jaw clenched. You're asking us to work with you? After all this? I'm not asking you to do anything, I said flatly. I'm giving you the choice. I'll help you rebuild, but it's going to be on my terms. You want to do this the right way, or you want to keep living in the illusion that you've done it all on your own? There was a long silence. George sat back down, his face pinched, looking like he'd just been slapped. Matt seemed to shrink into the corner of the room, unable to meet my eyes. Alice stood frozen, her mouth open in shock. Let us think about it, George finally muttered, his voice hoarse. I nodded. Take your time, but I'll be waiting for your answer. With that, I let them leave without saying another word. As soon as the door closed behind them, I sank into the couch, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They'd seen the truth, and now the real work was about to begin. The next morning, I didn't hear from them. Not at first. I had expected the calls, the texts, the pleading. But instead, there was silence. By noon, I got a message from Matt. Can we meet? It said. Simple. Director, no sorry or what the hell attached. I knew what it meant. I agreed to meet them at George's place. It wasn't the same as last time. No formality, no trying to act like everything was normal. This was different. This was them coming to terms with the truth. When I walked in, George was sitting on the couch, a bottle of whiskey on the table in front of him. His shoulders were hunched and his eyes were bloodshot. Matt was standing by the window, arms crossed, clearly trying to hold it together. Alice was sitting next to George, her face pale, lips pressed tight, looking like she wasn't sure whether to speak or just let him drink himself into oblivion. Sarah, George muttered, his voice hoarse. I don't know what to say. I crossed the room slowly, looking at each of them in turn. You don't have to say anything. You've already said it all. He looked up at me, his eyes still wild. I didn't know. I didn't know you were. I didn't know any of this. You've been running everything behind our backs, keeping it all afloat. I've been keeping you afloat, I corrected, because you never bothered to see how close to the edge you were. George ran a hand through his hair, the frustration giving way to something deeper. I never understood. He stopped, shaking his head like he couldn't quite believe what he was saying. You were always the one we didn't take seriously. I thought you were just playing around with your little design stuff. I didn't think it was real. Matt turned to face him, his face flushed with anger. What the hell is this? I don't even know how to. What, now you're saying we should have been paying attention to her this whole time? Don't do that, Matt, I said sharply, my voice cold. You don't get defensive now. You didn't see me as anything more than a failure. That's on you. Matt's eyes narrowed, the anger flashing through him. So this is how it is now? You're the one who gets to hold everything over us? You think you can just dictate how this works now because you've been secretly funding us? I didn't flinch. Number. But it's time for you to see the truth. You've all been using me, taking from me without even realizing it. And now that I've pulled back, you can't handle it. You want my help, but you need to understand. This doesn't work if I'm the only one carrying the load. George finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you asking for, Sarah? What do you want from us? I paused for a moment, letting the silence settle in. I'm not asking for anything. I'm offering you a chance to stop depending on me. You've had everything handed to you for so long, and it's made you weak. You've been treating me like I don't belong, but now I'm offering you two options. Two options? Alice whispered, her eyes wide. Yeah, option one, I said, looking each of them in the eye. You keep living the way you have. You'll keep running on borrowed time. Keep pretending that everything's fine as long as I'm here to catch you when you fall. But you'll never respect me, and you'll keep running things into the ground. And the second option? Matt asked, his tone more cautious now, but still defensive. Option two, I said, leaning forward slightly. You work with me. We rebuild your businesses together. Not on my terms, not on your terms, on our terms. But here's the catch. You've got to stop relying on me to fix things. I'm not going to be your backup anymore. No more handouts. You pull your weight and we build this thing up the right way. George sat there, silent. He was thinking, processing. Matt still hadn't fully absorbed what I was offering, but his anger had cooled. I could see the way he shifted his stance, like he was starting to realize how much had been taken from me. What do you say? I asked, my voice steady, unwavering. After a long pause, George spoke, his voice raw. I don't know what to say, but I'm willing to try. We've always treated you like you didn't matter. I didn't know how wrong I was. Matt looked between us, his expression torn. And what? You just think we're supposed to snap to it and start working for ourselves? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, I replied. You've had the resources, the opportunity. It's time you take some responsibility for your own shit. If we're going to make this work, it's going to be because we all put in the effort, not because I'm carrying the weight for you. Alice finally spoke, her voice trembling. I don't know if we're ready for this, but we'll try. We'll try. I let the words sit for a second, making them feel the weight of what they were agreeing to. Finally, I nodded. Good. That's all I'm asking for. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some magical reconciliation, but it was a start. They'd agreed, reluctantly, sure, but they'd agreed to work with me. And for the first time, I felt like they might actually start seeing me for what I was. Not the failure they'd always thought, but the one with the power to change everything. Now, it was time to see if they could live up to it. We met at my apartment again, this time with a different tone. It wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about moving forward. The tension was still there, thick, but it wasn't as suffocating. I could see George was actually listening now, like he was ready to take the first step. Matt, on the other hand, still looked like a man forced to swallow something bitter. And Alice? She was quieter than usual, but there was a shift in her, something that made me think she was starting to understand. I pulled up my plan on the projector, letting them see the breakdown of what I had in mind. I'm not here to do everything for you, I started, keeping my voice level. This isn't about me swooping in and saving the day. You're going to have to do the work, but I'll guide you through it. We're going to rebuild your businesses, but this is a partnership. No more handouts. I clicked through to George's tech company first. Here's where we start. Your brand is outdated. Your product is fine, but you've let the marketing slip. The company image is stale. I've been looking at your numbers, and you're not reaching nearly as many potential customers as you should be. The first step is rebranding. Matt scoffed, his arms crossed. Rebranding? This is some bullshit. We've been in business for decades. You're the one who wants to change everything. I don't need some flashy new image. Our customers know who we are. I turned to him, not giving in. That's the problem, Matt. You're not reaching new customers. You're stuck with the same group of people who've been loyal for years. You need a fresh look, fresh messaging. Your brand isn't just outdated, it's invisible. If you don't catch up, you're going to get left behind. Matt opened his mouth to argue, but George cut him off. She's right, Matt. The market's changed. We've been too slow to adapt. Matt glared at the screen, obviously irritated, but he didn't argue further. George, I continued, we're going to focus on a complete rebranding. We'll start by developing a new logo, new website, and social media presence. We'll also implement a customer feedback loop so you can stay ahead of the curve. You can keep your loyal customers, but we need to bring in new blood. It's going to take time, but you can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. George nodded, the weight of it sinking in. Okay, what's next? I clicked over to Matt's law firm's financials. You've got cash flow issues, Matt. Big ones. Your billing system is a mess. You're relying too much on high-profile cases, and your overhead is eating you alive. We're going to fix that. Matt sat up straighter, his defensiveness creeping back. I'm not some rookie, Sarah. I've been managing my firm for years. I don't need someone telling me how to run my business. I didn't flinch. You don't need me to tell you how to do your job, but you do need someone to help you with the business side of things. Your firm is struggling to maintain a steady income. You need to diversify your practice, streamline your operations, and cut some of the fat. We're going to restructure your finances, get a clearer sense of where your money's going, and start building a more sustainable model. Sounds like a whole lot of work, Matt muttered, not entirely convinced. I didn't back down. Yeah, it is. But if you want this firm to survive, it's the work you need to do. I'll help you put together a solid financial plan, get your billing system straight, and teach you how to bring in more steady clients. But you have to be willing to learn. Alice, who had been quiet until now, looked up from the table. And me? What do you want from me, Sarah? I turned to her, meeting her gaze. I need you to understand that this is going to take time. You've been leaning on me for years, but now we're all in this together. I need you to support the changes we're making, even if it's hard. I'm not asking you to agree with everything, but I need you to see why this is necessary. She bit her lip, clearly torn. I've always seen you as different, but I get it now. I see what you've been doing, and I understand. I'll support you, Sarah. I'll try. It wasn't the full, unconditional approval I might have hoped for, but it was enough. At least she was on board, and that was a start. I leaned back in my chair, taking a breath. We'll meet weekly. I'll walk you through each step, rebranding, restructuring, the works. You'll need to make some tough decisions, and you'll need to stick to the plan. If you back out, or if you start falling into old habits, this won't work. George nodded slowly. We're ready, Sarah. We'll do it your way. Matt still wasn't happy, but he stopped complaining. He crossed his arms and sat back, clearly not thrilled about it. But I could see the wheels turning in his head. Maybe he was starting to understand. We'll check in every week, I said, looking at each of them in turn. You'll do your part, I'll do mine, and we'll keep this thing moving. No more excuses, no more relying on me to fix it. There was a long pause before George finally spoke again. All right, let's do it, together. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. They were finally starting to get it, starting to see me as a partner, not a safety net. We weren't out of the woods yet, but this felt like the first real step forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like they might actually start respecting me for what I was capable of. A few months passed. The changes we'd put into motion were starting to show real results. George's tech company was, finally, back on track. The rebrand had worked, the customer base was growing, and they'd even secured a few new partnerships. They weren't out of the woods yet, but the future looked a hell of a lot brighter than it had when I first laid out the plan. Matt's law firm wasn't struggling anymore, either. The cash flow was more stable, and they'd diversified their services, reaching out to new client sectors. They'd fixed the billing issues, streamlined operations. There was still work to be done, but Matt had finally started accepting that maybe, just maybe, his younger sister knew something he didn't. For the first time in years, they were treating me like an equal. George actually asked for my opinion in meetings now. Real meetings, where my input mattered. Matt? He'd started consulting me on strategy, even admitting that I had a better grasp on business management than he did. Alice had backed off from her passive-aggressive comments, finally acknowledging the work I'd put in. She didn't exactly gush with praise, but I could see the change in her. I wasn't naive enough to think everything was perfect, though. I'd learned that growth wasn't just about putting in the work, it was about mutual respect. I'd spent so long fighting for recognition that I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have it given freely. But now that I had it, I wasn't taking it for granted. I could see the way things were shifting between us, but I was cautious. They still had a long way to go before they fully understood the value I brought to the table, not just as the person with the answers, but as someone whose ideas and input were just as important as anyone else's. I stood in my apartment one morning, looking out the window. The city was starting to wake up, and the soft light of the rising sun made the whole place feel peaceful. I felt a little lighter than I had in the past. There was a stillness in me, a quiet confidence that hadn't existed before. I glanced at the calendar on the wall and saw that our next family meeting was scheduled for the end of the week. It was a regular check-in now. No more crisis management, no more scrambling to fix things last minute. We were reviewing progress, looking forward. I smiled to myself. Things were different now. We'd built something better, something real. It wasn't just about fixing their problems anymore. It was about all of us, working together, learning, growing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my family finally saw me for what I was. Not the one who needed saving, but the one who had been holding things together all along. I had power now, not just in what I could do, but in how they treated me. I had earned my place and I wasn't going anywhere. The world was shifting, and so were we, together, and that was enough.